All right, Rabosai, good evening. Let us begin. Tonight, we are beginning Eretz Hashem Mishnah on the bottom of Yud Aleph from Aleph 11a. The Mishnah says as follows, B'shachar, levarich shaim lefanev achas lacharau. So in the morning, it's supposed to say, remember again, up until now we've been speaking about Kriyas Shema. Now actually we're going to speak a little bit about the Berachos of Kriyas Shema. So the Mishnah says as follows, in the morning, levarich shaim lefanev achas lacharau. So in the morning, we make two brachas before we go ahead and recite Shema, and one bracha afterwards. Uba erev, and in the evening, mevarech shtayim lefana ushtayim lachara. We make two brachas before Shema and two brachas after Shema. Achas arucha v'achas kitzara. Now again, ultimately again in the brachos after the nighttime Shema, so we recite two brachas. One of them is long and one of them is short. Again, well, bless you. We'll get into all of this a little bit more in depth in Eretz Hashem. So again, when Chazal said that it's a longer bracha, you have to keep it a longer bracha. You can't make it short. And when it's supposed to be a short bracha, ultimately again you can't prolong it. If a bracha is supposed to end, let's say with a Baruch Atah Hashem, you can't end it in a different way. And again, if a bracha doesn't end with Baruch Atah Hashem, you can't choose to insert your own ending to the bracha. So this is actually part of an overarching concept of that when it comes to brachos, Chazal, the Lashon of the Gemara is made a matbeah. They coined a certain framework, and you can't go ahead and mess with that framework. Whatever Chazal did, that's what remains. Beautiful. Says the Gemara. So let's talk about. So what are the Berachos Kriyas Shema? Amar Rabbi Yaakov, Amar Rabbi Oshia, Amud Beis, Yotze Ar Uvarei Choshech. So what's the bracha? First bracha is Yotzer Oru Varei Choshech. That Hashem is the one. This is, remember again, when we speak about Berachos Kriyas Shema, so remember again, we're talking about Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu contains Berachos Kriyas Shema. So the first bracha we say is Yotzer Oru Varei Choshech. Says the Gemara, Lema Yotzer Or Uvarei Noga. Why not say Hashem is the one who creates light and creates twilight? They're both saying, now, why would you go with twilight? So twilight is interesting because twilight, Noga, is like a more intriguing time, right? Night is a definitive time of day, right? Day is a definitive time of day. Like twilight is like that combination. So why not say that Chashon Baruch Hu creates twilight? Because both say that's a pasuk. In other words, we base the bracha on the verbiage found in the pasuk. And the pasuk that we're discussing is in the Navi Yeshaya. And the Navi Yeshai itself says, Yotze Ar Uvarei Choshech. So therefore we just take the same lashon of the pasuk, ultimately again, for the bracha. Elamiata, Ose Shalom Uvorei Ra. Here's the problem, right? Again, we say in Berachos Kriyas Shema, Ose Shalom Uvorei Es HaKol. Right? That's how we have the bracha. But yet the pasuk itself is, Hashem makes Shalom Uborei Ra. Creates evil. So why not go ahead and say Borei Ra as part of the pasuk? So the Gemara says, do we use that phrase as it's written in the pasuk? No. Eleksiv Ra. Rather, again, the pasuk itself says Ra. The Karinan Hakol. But yet, when we make the bracha, we say Ose Shalom Uvorei Sakol. So what's going on over here? Lishna Ma'alya. Now, because when making a bracha, the Chazal didn't want to use lashon of Ra. I didn't want to use lashon of negative, of evil. So therefore, instead they just put in their hakol. Hachanami lema noga lishnamai. So over here. So let's say Yotzer Aru Varei Noga. Noga is so nice, right? Noga is so nice. Twilight is so beautiful. So let's also use a nice lashon. I'm going to say we're on 11b. We are now 5 lines down. Ella Omerava. Midas Yom Balayla Umidas Laila Bayom. So we'll say rather again. This is what Rava says. The brachos are formulated in the following way. The brachos are there in order to go ahead and make mention of the aspect of daytime at night and to make mention of the aspect of nighttime by day. That's how the brachos are structured. So the Gemara says, Bishlam Midas Laila Bayom Kidarminon. So I understand we mentioned the concept of night by day. So remember again, that's Yotzer Ar Uvarei Choshech. We're mentioning nighttime, right? Yotze Ar Uvarei Choshech Ella Midas Yom Balayla Hechi Mishkachas. But where do you find the mentioning of daytime in the context of night? Amar Abaye Golel Or Mipnei Choshech the Choshech Mipnei Ar. We'll say right in the Berachos Kriyas Shema, the brachos preceding Shema by Ma'ariv. Literally, we say Golel Or Mipnei Choshech. He rolls away light in the presence of darkness, the Choshech Mipnei Ar, and night from before light. So the idea was interesting enough. So the brachos themselves are structured that in the day we make mention of night, and at night we make mention of day. I will say there's actually, I think, a real profundity in that. If you look at that lashon, kadei lahaskir midas yom balayla umidas laila bayom. Right? You have to remember the nighttime by day You have to remember the daytime by night. So we'll say, what's the pshat? What's the pshat? So what does it mean? You have to work backwards. What does it mean? You have to remember the daytime at night. So remember again, night in general always represents uncertainty, always represents difficulty and adversity. So how does the Jew approach night? How do you approach Laila? And what's the answer? What's the answer? With confidence, right? That there's going to be light. That's the secret of our people, right? We approach life with such a sense of hope, such a sense of optimism, such a belief that somehow, some way, like Gam Zulatova, everything is for good, and Emirat Hashem, as they say, Akol Yistader, right? Everything will work out as it needs to work out. That's what it means to remember the daytime at night. Even when your life is night, you have difficult circumstances, you can't lose sight that Emirat Hashem, day will come. But the reverse is also true. Even when it's daytime, you have to remember night. And I will say, what does that mean? What that means is, when life is good, and it may sound like a little bit of like a morose stop, one thing you have to keep in mind is, it's not going to last. Now, what does that mean, it's not going to last? What it means is life is a series of peaks and valleys. So even if life is incredibly wonderful, happy now, just be prepared that at some point in time there's going to be adversity. Sometimes what ends up happening in life, is that when we encounter like a good patch, Baruch Hashem, we kind of lull ourselves into like this false sense of security. I guess the hard times are behind me, right? And it's like smooth sailing from here. Then what happens? Then something comes and it's like wow, like a punch in the gut. And I'm like, so the better way to approach life is when you are experiencing like a wonderful time in life, be besimcha. But also be cognizant that there's definitely going to be adversity and difficulty. I'll share with you, there's a beautiful Arizal. The Arizal said, I've mentioned this before, the Arizal says, why is it that people cry from happiness? Right? It's an interesting idea, because crying is usually associated with sadness. You see this all the time like at a wedding, right? People cry at weddings. Why is crying? When you feel simcha, like when you are at like the peak of joy, it's not laughter that comes out. Right? When you're at the peak of joy, what comes out? Tears. So the Arizal says something amazing. Arizal says, because deep down, when you're at that pinnacle of joy, the neshama knows you can't hold on to it. The neshama knows that this moment is fleeting, and chances are, difficulty, adversity are going to go ahead and come your way as well. So the neshama knows that, but the neshama doesn't want to say that. So instead, what happens? It manifests itself in tears. We call them tears of joy, but it's the same tears of joy that are tears of sadness. In the moment of most acute simcha, there's like a deep, profound awareness that there is going to be adversity. That I can't hold on to these moments, but rather adversity is going to set in. And it sounds a little bit morose, but it's not morose. It's actually real. I've come to find that the worst thing you could do in life is go through life with an expectation that life is supposed to be easy. Because if you go through life with an expectation that life is supposed to be easy, and then suddenly it's not easy, like, whoa, what happened over here? You see this all the time, right? People encounter adversity, and they're lost. They're lost. They don't know how to deal with it. They don't know what to do. They can't find right side up. Often it's because they've come to adversity with an expectation that life is supposed to be easy. But instead, if you approach life that life is not going to be easy, it is not. It's going to be filled with adversity. It's just a question of how intense the adversity is, but the adversity is good because you grow from it. But I accept that as a reality of life. That things are going to be hard. So then suddenly when the difficulties set in, you're like, I got this. I don't know how I got this, but I got this. I will, and I would say that's midas yom ba'layla umidas layla bayom. When things are difficult, layla, have the hope and optimism that light is going to come. And when things are good, just steady yourself and ready yourself for the fact that adversity is going to come. And that way, when it does come, because it always comes, Emirat Hashem, you'll be ready for it. Incredible. Let's go back to V'idach Mahi. Shabbos says, so that's one bracha Berachos Kriyas Shema. Yozer Varechoshach. What's the other one? V'iyamadi. Amar Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, Avarabba. Let's say quite literally. See, it's always exciting, by the way, like when you find something in the Siddur, right, that we say to this very day, and you find it let's say this is like a couple thousand years old. You know what I'm saying? This is dated material over here, but yet it's ridiculously contemporary. How beautiful is it that the same Avarabba that's on the page of Yud Aleph Amud Beis in Berachos is the same Avarabba that we say today. Who else has a continuity like that? You want to know the secret of the Jewish people? It's Avarabba. It's the fact that we can embed ourselves in a tradition, we can embed ourselves in a service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that in certain ways is immutable. Certain way Judaism evolves. Everything evolves, but there are certain immutable things that keep us anchored. It's just so beautiful. So Avarabba is the second bracha. V'chein ori le'Rabbi Elazar le'Rabbi Das berei Avarabba. Tanya Nami Hachir Braysa. The Torah says, "Ein omrim avas olam, ela avarabba." We don't say avas olam, rather we say avarabba. I suppose that's interestingly enough. We're not going to get into it now, but this is one of the interesting things between Nusach Sfard and Nusach Ashkenaz, right? Avarabba versus avas olam. Okay, it all comes from the Gemara. Rabbanan Amri avas olam. Rabbanan say no, you don't say avarabba. You do say avas olam. V'chinu omer v'avas olam avticha al kein mishachticha chased. And again, he quotes the pasuk over here from Yirmiyahu, that ultimately again the avas olam. So that's just quoting the lashon over here. So good. So we'll say so first. So this is, remember, this is Berachos Kriyas Shema. So first bracha is Yotzer Oru Vorei Choshech, right? And that first bracha ends, remember again, with Yotzer Hama Oros. And then second bracha is Avarabba or Avas Olam, depending on which nusach you daven. Incredible. Let's go back. Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel. We'll say very interesting Gemara. Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel. Hishkim. Shmuel, is there honey in this? Yeah. Delicious. Good. No, none for you. None for you. No, you're cut off from beverage service here at shiur. The Gemara says as follows: Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Hishkin l'shanos. So let's listen to this. Let's say a person wakes up in the morning and they want to learn. First thing they want to learn. Shabbos says, so now what's the halacha? Now we're going to transition a little bit from the halachos of Berachos Kriyas Shema to Berachos HaTorah. So watch this. A person wakes up in the morning and they want to learn. Ad shelo kara Kriyas Shema, tzarich levarich. So we'll say if you have not yet said Shema. So as I wake up first thing, I haven't said Shema yet, but I want to learn. Tzarich levarich. You have to say Berachos HaTorah. So we're talking about Berachos Torah over here. Okay, Mishakara Kriyas Shema Izrach Levarich, but if you already said Shema, you don't have to say Berachos HaTorah. Why not? Shekvar Niftar Bi'ahava Rabbah. Very interesting, because if you said Shema, that means you already said Berachos Kriyas Shema, and in Berachos Kriyas Shema is the bracha of Avarabba, and Avarabba discharges your obligation for Berachos Kriyas Shema. Now, why is that? So take a quick look at Rashi. You see Rashi is in the first short line. Shevar niftar be'avarabba sheyesh ba me'ein berachas haTorah. Because avarabba itself is like a mini berachas haTorah. How so? V'sein bilibenu lilmod ulalamed lishmar balasus ulakayim as kol direi salmud sarasecha. So Rashi points out over here that in avarabba, there's a statement. We ask Hashem to please place in our hearts the ability to learn Torah, to teach Torah, to observe Torah, to perform Torah, to uphold all the tenets of Torah. So in essence, it's actually very interesting. So to a certain degree, Avarabba is like a mini Berachos HaTorah. So what the Gemara is suggesting is like this. I wake up first thing in the morning, I want to learn. So if I haven't yet said Shema and its brachas, then I have to say Berachos HaTorah. However, if I said Shema and its brachas, then technically speaking, those discharge my obligation of Berachos HaTorah. Amar Rav Huna, L'mikra tzarich levarich. You have to say Berachos HaTorah before you learn Chumash. U'lemedrash ein tzarich levarich. So what's the interesting machlokes? What requires Berachos HaTorah? For Medrash, you don't have to say Berachos HaTorah. For Rabbi Elazar says no. L'mikra u'lemedrash tzarich levarich. You have to say Berachos HaTorah for both Mikra and Medrash. The Mishnah Yitzarach Levarich. However, again, from Mishnah you don't have to say Berachos Torah. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Af the Mishnah Nam Yitzarach Levarich. Aval Talmud Yitzarach Levarich. Rava Amar Af the Talmud Yitzarach Levarich. Damar Rav Chiya bar Ashi. Because again, so Rava says even for Talmud you have to say Berachos Torah. Damar Rav Chiya bar Ashi. Rav Chiya bar Ashi says Zimnin Sigin Havi Kaimna Kamei Derav Listnuye Pirkin Besifra. Rav. So listen to this. Rabbi Chiya bar Ashi said, many times I was before Rav to learn. And what happened? Rav would wake up, have a makdim. So Rav have a makdim the kamash yadeh. Rav would wake up, he would wash his hands, ubarich, he would say Berachos HaTorah, umasni lan pirkin, and then he would go ahead and teach us. So you see from here that halacha ma'is you require Berachos HaTorah before you learn anything. This is how we paskin. In general, when you wake up in the morning, so the halacha is you really have to say Berachos HaTorah before you go ahead and learn anything. Any body of Torah knowledge requires Berachos HaTorah prior to going ahead and learning. Now, what I will point out to you that's interesting, I will say, this discussion of using avarabba for Berachos. Let me just say this quickly outside. So remember, the Gemara here introduces this idea that maybe avarabba could count as Berachos Torah. So I'll tell you where this does come up. So ideally, we don't rely on avarabba for Berachos Torah. A person is supposed to say regular Berachos Torah as they're printed in the Siddur. Okay? So where does avarabba come up? Listen to this. Let's say I forgot to say Berachos Torah. Whatever, I was running late, I ran into shul, I just started davening, I forgot to recite Berachos Torah. And then what happens? I realize, as when I'm getting up to Shema, that I didn't say Berachos Torah, I could have in mind that avarabba should count as my Berachos Torah. So that could work. In other words, you don't do a lechatchila, but ex post facto, if you forgot Berachos Torah, you're already up to Shema, you could go ahead and rely on that avarabba to count as your Berachos Torah. The only caveat is a person has to make sure to actually learn some Torah immediately after davening in order to fully activate the avarabba identity as Berachos Torah. Okay, just an interesting side halacha. Because it says in Rabbi Mevarich, so what bracha? What is Berachos Torah? So Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel, I share Kedisham Sasav Tzivana Lasok B'Divrei Torah. That's the bracha, right? We thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He sanctified us for the mitzvahs and He commanded us to engage in Torah. Rabbi Yochanan Messiah Bahachi, how Rav Nashon looking at Divrei Sarascha Befinu Uvefifios Amcha Beis Yisrael. So Rabbi Yochanan added in like an additional supplication. Hashem, please make your Torah pleasant. We'll say, what a beautiful bracha, right? We ask Hashem, please, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. But can allow us to find the sweetness in it. I think this is one of the things that you know, when you finally taste that sweetness of Yiddishkeit, that sweetness of Torah, it's so good, right? You wish you had it like all those years beforehand. So I ask Hashem, please just give me the sweetness. Allow me. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do whatever I have to do. But let me taste the sweetness in it. Harevna, make it pleasant, and make it pleasant in my mouth, and in the mouth of all of my children, my offspring, and all of Klal Yisrael. And allow us all to be people who know your name and are engaged in Torah. Baruch atah Hashem, hamalamei Torah li'amo Yisrael. Hashem, you are the source of all blessing, the one who teaches Torah to Klal Yisrael. Rav Hamnuna said, no, this is Berachos Torah. Amar, Asher bachar banu, mikol la'amim, v'nasan lanu es Torah, so Baruch atah Hashem, nosin Torah. That's Berachos Torah. We thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu for giving us the Torah. Okay? Amar Rav Hamnuna, Zohi Mu'ula Shebe Brachas. Rav Hamnuna says, I like that last one best. Asher bachar banu, that's the best one. But what's the halacha? Rabbi say, Hilchach, Nimrinhu Lekulhu. Rabbi say, what's the halacha? The halacha is we say all of them. Remember, what you just saw over here, this is our Berachos Torah. Now, we have a couple of other things because we kind of sprinkle in there some actual sections of Torah as well, a Mishnah, some Psukim, but halacha l'maisa, this is it. This is all Berachos Torah. Now, but I will point out for you something very interesting. As much as all of this becomes part of Berachos Torah, the bracha of Asher bachar banu is the primary part of Berachos Torah. That is the primary part. So again, if for some reason one didn't have time or one is unable to recite all the Berachos Torah, the bracha of Hashem bachar banu is the ikr, and that one takes really primacy over everything else. Tanan Hasan. All right, but you know what we'll do is we'll stop over here. We'll stop over here for tonight. Good. We'll cover some good ground. And hopefully we'll get back on track now for doing an Amud. Shkach tomorrow night again. Same time. Chevra. Such a chasson with all of you. What's tomorrow? Tomorrow's Wednesday. Yeah, good. Meretz Hashem. I'll find a reason to put out a poll for something this week, but